Niramish online, and I will talk after that. Happy New Year, everyone. Hi, Jerry, first person to I'm seeing from the group. Hi, Ankit, you're here on one. Let's get you on the other. I'm accepting you here. And hi, Urja. Happy New Year to you too. Jerry, why don't you just join? You should just join. ठीक है. Okay, is Niramish coming online as well?
Yes. Can you hear me, Ritika?
I can hear you, yes.
Perfect. Oh, wait. I think, which account have I joined from? Is the problem of having two accounts.
Join from
my personal one.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me try from the other one.
Okay. Aisha. So while I have you all here, while I'm waiting to, okay, Rita, I'm presuming yes, Niramish is joined. I'm not sure if Rita is also going to be joining us or whether it's just Niramish talking today. So I'm going to start with Niramish, wait for him to join, and then let anyone else join. Hello.
Hello. I think I'm glad we managed.
Yes. It's taken us a little while, but fingers crossed it's going to work.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to make myself smaller, get myself out of the way. And firstly, I just want to welcome you, Ankit, and I want to welcome all our listeners today. And thank you all for being here. So Dili Ki Diva, essentially, what we are trying to do out here is bring together, what people think of as different strands of art, culture, literature, history. And as Ankit and I keep talking, you're going to see gender coming in, you're going to see sustainability coming in, you're going to see that throughout history, how all of this has worked, trade, it's a very important topic. So as all of this converge, I'm absolutely thrilled to have Ankit Vyas with me today and on ArtRadio. And it is ArtRadio 10, it should have been ArtRadio 11, so that we finished 11 episodes of ArtRadio in December itself, in 2023 itself. But we have a couple of people here who are equally important in what we're doing in ArtRadio. So Javeer is there, Subha should be there, Urja is there. Now, these were folks I'm doing a course with, and they, when we all started talking, we all started getting really enthusiastic about this course on Indian aesthetics, we found there was just so much more than the course that we all wanted to talk about. And it just converged by people, we seem to know the same people, we seem to know the same names, we're all looking at the same Instagram accounts. And that's where you came in, Ankit, because within a week of my meeting Javeer, you were very much on the scene, and you were in Delhi. I didn't get to meet you, but after that, I was following your journey right while you were roaming around Rajasthan. Yeah. And, we were discussing miniatures along the way, etc. And you've been kind enough to leave your work. And I know you said you have very little time before you actually become a lawyer.
Well, I'm waiting for my results. So let's see how that goes, and if I pass, so I'll find out in February. So yeah, fingers crossed.
Either way, I mean, you're well on your way on being an art historian. I don't know how that merges, but you're going to figure that one out. But okay, so for those of you who don't know, Ankit Vyas runs this amazing page which is called Niramish, and he's going to explain very soon what Niramish means. And a lot of us in our class have been following this page in this past 6 months that we have all been together. I mean, all of us started earlier, but then we found that we were all following the same page. And it's this page which just looks into details of miniatures. And it just makes every miniature so beautiful, because it really breaks down why we love miniatures. And yet it doesn't differentiate at any level on, this is a Mughal miniature. This is in the Hashia and the border. This is the Rajasthani miniature, and that I find really interesting. You don't come with any uh, any of these barriers in your mind. You're very
True.
egalitarian as far as miniatures are concerned. You just look
That's
for beauty.
Yes, I mean when I started off, I think I initially I did not used to even have captions, and then my friends were like, oh no, you must, it would help people to kind of just gain a bit more insight. But even those captions are pretty much the titles of the paintings as they appear in these museum collections. But yeah, just to sort of come to your question of what Niramish actually means. I mean, I've answered this before in some of these Q&A sessions, but actually it has no relation to art. It literally is a Sanskrit word which basically means without flesh, reflecting the fact that I'm a vegetarian. And it's the reason I named it as such was basically to annoy a friend of mine who's this Punjabi guy, and he was a sort of a non-vegetarian guy, and it was back before the Instagram version of this account. This used to be a Tumblr sort of page where I kind of started exploring more. So yeah, the name itself doesn't really have much relation to art or miniatures. But yeah, it was just kind of, I thought it sounded nice, and I just wanted to sort of, annoy a friend of mine. So I thought, okay, let's do that. And yeah, then it just kind of, during lockdown, I started noticing that some of the posts that I was posting on my other page were appearing on Instagram. So I thought, well, I may as well start a page. And it was meant to be more as a mood board for kind of my inspiration, etc. But then I realized that there were many other people who sort of, shared the same interest. I got to connect with similar kind of like-minded people. So that journey has been particularly nice. And I've come to meet, as you mentioned, Javier, and I've interacted with Uja like online as well. And so many other individuals. Obviously, we also kind of, met thanks to the account. And so yeah, it's been a really amazing kind of thing for me. But yeah, I do actually, I have no sort of, formal training as such in art. I studied law, and I work for a law firm. And yeah, this is kind of my passion. I was lucky enough that this year in India, I got to spend 3 months to just learn more about miniatures. I was in Jaipur. But besides that, most of the stuff I've learned is kind of, self-taught, and I like to read. So that has helped. But yeah, that's how I've ended up here in front of you. So thank you very much for having me.
And why did you choose a Kota painting?
So, I mean, it was sort of, we were discussing, as you sort of casually just said, so when are we going to do a live together? And you had mentioned some of the kind of, regions that you like. And I obviously come from Jodhpur, and my mother's hometown is Kishangarh. So those, I'm sort of slightly partial to those, along with Bahari miniatures. But Kota is something that I'm kind of aware of, like the paintings, they're so distinctive in themselves that you can't really sort of, forget them once you look at them. So I thought, there would be good subject. And right before you had approached me, I'd just done kind of, 3 posts from this painting, that we are looking at. And even prior to that, I've kind of gone to this painting. I really love it for its detail. So I thought, you know what, let's kind of, use this opportunity not only to kind of tell people more about this painting, but also improve my own knowledge as well. So yeah, it was a win-win situation.
I know, but it's always really difficult, if somebody comes to you and I was in a drunken Christmas Eve mood at that time when I sent you that message, and to just have this whole space of being told, choose any painting, and you got to talk on it for half an hour. I'm trying to do that for class, and I've driven everyone around me mad because there's so many paintings I want to write on.
True. And even, like after I had chosen it and I'd sent it to you, I was wondering, I was like, did I make the right choice or not? But it was more in the sense that, so, I mean, what has happened because of the way I post on my page, I tend to kind of frequent these various museum collections like online. So I know mostly in my head as to which painting is where, and like, you know, a general kind of sense of them. So I was struggling which one to choose, and like there could be several points made about this painting, but there are other paintings which are, you know, equally where you can talk about them, you know, a lot, and what they represent and their details. So from that perspective, yeah, it was. I did have doubts, but then again, it's more from the place of like, miniatures are just so fascinating, and there was just so much to talk about them that, yeah, it didn't take me that long, luckily, but maybe it's because this painting was on my mind and in any case, so that's why. But yeah, it's a beautiful painting. But
Okay, can we dive in if you don't mind?
yeah,
I'm
sure.
so okay. A little bit more about the painting. What period does
Yeah.
it fall in? It's got all these various elements.
Yeah.
Come.
So the painting is titled, is called Ladies Shooting from a Pavilion. I think that's what it's called. It's in the Cleveland Museum of Art, and the date is 1810. So, like when you sort of look at Kota and the paintings it produced from a sort of art historical perspective, it is known for like its hunting scenes. Like this is what probably most people who are aware of miniatures, if you tell them like Kota, then they'll think of these sort of grand hunting scenes. I would still say the painting we have in front of us is still a bit more idyllic than some of the other scenes, which are really like you have these ferocious tigers, etc., and lions, and so. But this particular painting is what I'll just describe it in case, you know, anybody has joined who hasn't seen. Obviously, we have it on live, or just in case if anyone's visually impaired. But it's a scene in a sort of a kind of a forest setting, and on one side you have these court ladies, three of them, hunting from a pavilion. There is a pond in front of them,
and all in different clothing.
Yeah. And which was again, like just today I found that quite interesting. I was trying to see, like, you know, the various examples about that. But and then on the other side we have these two lions who've come to the pond to drink water. One of them is the male lion, kind of is looking the other way because something has disturbed the sort of the deers. There's a group of deers in the backdrop, like, and then behind them there are some like two more running. But it's such a detailed painting because also in front of these lions, we also find that there are like a pair of sort of boars and deers, and there's a civet in the corner. You have a lot of birds. So it's there's also next to the sort of pavilion on the other side of the pond, there is a shivling as well. And in the backdrop, you have a cliff, and it's a sunrise by the looks of it, and a sort of really colorful, I would say, bright morning. And when you look at the painting at first, you can't quite see it, but there is a procession of sorts happening. There is a man on his elephant, and that man is more in the style of a sort of a British official, a European. And he might be hunting as well, because there are dogs depicted as well. But that level of detail, it's really fascinating. So that on, you know, a sort of a larger level, this is what the painting depicts. In terms of why I find it interesting, I suppose, is that this is probably, like, well, in my opinion, this is a masterwork. And we do have sort of similar settings of hunting scenes that we find, like both from Kota and Bundi. But when you really sort of, you know, zoom in, and luckily if anybody, you know, gets a chance, do go on the website of Cleveland Museum and do try and kind of, you know, see the details of this painting, and you'll realize how much effort has gone into it. If you look at these lions, kind of, you know, there's a lot of like cross hatching to kind of, show their sort of mane and hair.
And that's typical for Kota, right?
It
This hatching.
Yeah, exactly. It is typical. You find it in, and I haven't kind of noticed it as much in the other sort of, styles of paintings. So yeah, it does. And these lines, like some historians have argued that it's because, I mean, and this is where the historical element comes in. Kota, obviously, the Rajputs were generals in Mughal armies, and as Aurangzeb and the others sort of tried to expand into the Deccan, the Mughal emperor, they sort of posted these Rajput generals in the Deccan, and they fought a lot like there in the Deccan, away from their homes. And it's there that they probably would have encountered artists who would have come from places like Iran or Central Asia. And I was just reading, and they said, like, a lot of these Kota lions actually sort of bear a similarity to some of the lions you find in Persepolis, etc. So that is, again, like quite interesting. And in terms of the artists themselves, like this painting, we don't know who actually painted it. It must have been a master painter, just going by the quality of it. It could be like a team of people as well, but it's really difficult to tell in that sense, because we know for sure, obviously, that based on inscriptions from other paintings within that miniatures were sort of, worked on by a different artist, say in Mughal miniatures, one might have done the face or one might have done the borders. So here too, there could have been a possibility of that. But when I look at it, I don't know, like my gut feeling is like, oh, one artist would have done it, because the attention to detail.
Yeah, and you're right, it's the same style right throughout.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just the entire composition of it as well, because this painting must have been like a sort of, even in its sort of in its own time, people would have appreciated it a lot, because you have a similar kind of, painting, like the exact composition of sorts in a museum in Canada. And that was made, I think, around 1860s. And that's a lot less refined and less detailed. I don't know if they had like budget issues or if they just didn't have the great artist kind of painting it. But, and then likewise, you also see some, this theme of kind of lions or tigers coming to a pond to drink. That also features in other paintings as well. And it's almost like aspects of this painting have been taken, or actually I've seen paintings prior to this, because this was done in 1810, and I've seen paintings from, say, like 1750s, 60s, and that latter half of 1700s, where you do find like skies like this, or that hillock. So they were the artists were clearly kind of borrowing, and that was not really looked down upon in any sense. They all obviously were also, tracings were encouraged as well. One of the early artists that we sort of call as the elephant master in Kota, you can see certain paintings where he, like what he drew, like those sort of kind of elephants are perhaps the basis or the inspiration for other paintings. So this kind of seeking inspiration and seeking the parts from one painting to the other to create an entirely new was not unusual. But yeah, this, when you look at some of these other paintings that came after this one, I really do feel that this one is special because of its detail. And yeah, it's kind of fascinating, and I'll just come to the other bits as well. Just a moment.
I've got a couple of questions.
Yes, do go ahead.
Probably already looked at, and you're going to come back to. But one, the presence of the shivling right next to the shooting is. The second is the heads turned in the opposite direction. Third is these are mad Maharajas, right? I mean, you've got Kota paintings of the Maharaja on a horse on top of the palace. And you've got a lot of typically mad women as well in Kota paintings. I mean, they are far more far more chilled than any other Mughal or Rajasthani painters that I've ever seen. So, uh, I mean, even this, it's different from anything else, right? I mean, that's very obvious. We haven't seen very much of this kind of women hunting. So these three questions.
So I'll start with the kind of the lion as to why it's looking the other way, or like what could be the reason. And I mean, the true answer is like we don't know for sure, but perhaps it could be that the kind of, you know, the deer in the backdrop that are kind of running away, or some other animal, you know, maybe has alerted them. So maybe they have seen the women first than these lions. Maybe the lions are too busy, you know, sort of drinking. So perhaps that could be the reason for, you know, looking away. As for the shivling, it really is a beautiful kind of, in the way the kind of surrounding bushes, etc., are done. But in most of these paintings, and you'd see that in paintings from Awadh as well, there are a lot of these scenes of women going to the forest to worship or meet holy men or yoginis or yogis. And I have seen many paintings where you'd find these shivlings in forests, or sometimes even like nighttime scenes. So yeah, it is quite sort of a fascinating thing that they have, you know, placed it in here. And mind you, like at this point of time, most of Rajasthan is in the grip of sort of Vaishvanite kind of, you know, sort of religious movements. So especially the Vallabh Kul or Pushti Marg. So from that kind of point of view, it's really fascinating. And in terms of, remind me, what was the kind of the other thing? Was it about like women and how they were sort of in context of like Maharajas and this hunting scene? Well, Kota and Bundi, I think they just have this sort of thing for hunting, I feel. I think there were even the animals that they draw, all kinds, like say elephants or even other like tigers and all. They really show them in like great movement. The other Rajasthani courts just did not quite manage to capture that. When you see a Kota elephant or a Kota tiger, or like these animals here, like those monkeys that are climbing on from top of the pavilion, there is a great sense of you know, movement, and they have a personality of some sort, I find, like I feel. And that is yeah, you don't find that as much in some of the other kind of Rajput schools, or for that matter other miniature schools like Mughal and Deccan, etc. So from that perspective, yes. But so coming from that perspective, you in this I don't particularly like to use the word school as such, but for ease, yes, you in this school you do find such scenes where women are hunting. In the other school, like I remember when we were doing a practice session, I was telling you about, like, yes, I've seen images or paintings of you know, women hunting, but it's more in the context of like other schools. In the other schools, it's like, you know, Roopmati and Bas Bahadur and kind of those kind of, but you don't see them as often. So yeah, in that sense, Kota is kind of unusual. This, and at this point, like the historical kind of aspect is also relevant, because the Maharaja who was, or Maharao as the Kota rulers were titled, who was ruling was Umed Singh the first, I think. And he, I think, came to the throne in around 1773, I think, or like, well, around 1770s basically, and he was 10. So he had to have a regent, and the regent was Zalim Singh Jhala, whose grandson later kind of was given the Jhalabar, where the so that's how it was. I think the last kind of a little principality created by the British in Rajasthan.
And was the Zalim Singh the precursor of all the Hindi film names of Zalim Singh ever after?
Well, that we don't know, but what we do know was that he literally effectively became the de facto ruler of Kota. He was given this title Raj Rana, and he just came to sort of control the affairs of Kota, and he did a good job apparently from what the like. So you know, if you read like Todd's annals, like James Todd, who was this British kind of company sort of official who toured Rajasthan and wrote like Todd's annals, I think Antiquities and Annals. Again, we find references to that. So Umaid Singh was effectively kind of like a puppet in a way, but he was also he was described as not as interested in ruling either. He was happy to go hunting, and Zalim Singh commissioned many hunting kind of miniatures, and then he would offer it to Umaid Singh. One thing about him was that he never really sort of, you know, he always gave respect to the Maharao. Like he was happy with the arrangement where he is kind of effectively controlling the power, but in essence there is still like, you know, the ruler. So we find that he commissioned a lot of these hunting kind of paintings, but then if you think about like how do paintings kind of, you know, get made, or like in what particular reason, one of the things is like, well, if the ruler has enough time, because he doesn't have to worry about like going to war, etc., of course he can engage in these pastimes, and he would have taken his kind of, you know, harem of women with him, or like in general it is said that when Zalim Singh Jhala was kind of, you know, the de facto ruler, it was a good time, and around 1803 you get the first British contact with Kota, because at that time the threat from the Marathas for these Rajput states is real. So they are kind of, and I think there's a sort of some kind of, you know, some British East India Company officials are either passing through, or there's some kind of interaction between Kota and them, and they maybe the Zalim Singh had approved some kind of help to the British officials, on which I think the whole Maratha fined Kota, like that they had to pay like 1 lakh rupees or something along this line. And then again later on, you get then I think the very next year you then get these British East India Company soldiers trying to seek some sort of refuge in Kota because of the Marathas. And that's why I find that European individual at the back very interesting, because it just makes me think like, well, if this painting was kind of completed around 1810 and the first British contact was in 1803, then yes, it is very plausible that, yeah, that is that European kind of, you know, person at the back, like these artists would have seen, and it must have been some sort of a novelty for them. Of course, they might have seen them in paintings, but you know, to see a kind of a person in real life, a white person, I suppose, a European. So yeah, like.
Sorry, and I'm constantly
Sure.
interrupting you. I'm sorry for that, and I know you'll come back to your point.
Yeah.
But would he be around the women from the Zanana? I mean,
no, but I mean, in this painting as such, like it's kind of the European kind of individual atop an elephant is right at the backdrop. So he's a lot, you know, he's further away, and that also is kind of a European influence, you know, having this sort of a very sort of large sort of horizon kind of scene with these details, like so he wouldn't have been around the Zanana, but these women, you know, not just even before Umaid Singh, we had kind of Maharajas, etc., who were interested in hunting or enjoyed hunting. I'm forgetting the name of the other ruler, but he would take kind of, you know, his queens, etc., with him. So yeah, from that kind of perspective, and in this painting we see there aren't any kind of, you know, men in this painting as such.
Exactly.
So that again gives us some more insight that, you know, they did this as their kind of pastime. But another kind of important point that while I was reading up to just prepare for the session was that this is not just a kind of a pastime or a hobby, but it's also very much an act that a ruler is showing that he's able to protect by killing these ferocious animals. And that perhaps these paintings were, you know, created to valorize that aspect as well. Because in Kota, you find that there is there are a certain set of paintings that confirm the ruler's kind of divine right to rule. And there, what you find most fascinating are certain paintings where Krishna is shown hunting, and with a gun. So like in the form of, because the Kota effectively at one point, basically, the king made Brijnathji as the effective, like the Kota ruler, and like he was kind of, serving under him. So, and Kota got into the grip of sort of Vaishnavism. I think it was around sort of, again, in the 1700s. He says one of the, maybe the Allahabad governor, the Mughal governor, was revolting, and the Mahara was asked about, or was it? No, it was the Bundi, the Bundi ruler who was revolting, and the Mughal emperor asked the Kota ruler to kind of, go and sort of sort that out. And on the way, he stopped at Vrindavan, and that's where he initiated into the Vallabh Sampradaya, which is the Pushti Marg. And as a result, we then see a whole host of sort of paintings that are to do with sort of ritualistic aspects of this sect.
Because that makes sense. Because what's always puzzled me about this photo is, this painting, not a photo, is the piece. I mean, despite the princesses all having guns, none of the animals are bothered. They're all carrying on with their lives. The monkey right on top of them, the little spivet is eating. The lions are affected by something behind, but not by them.
It is a very idyllic scene. I always wonder why, like, this, and like you, I have always found it odd as well, like, as to, because generally the patrons were the, the royals themselves, or kind of courtiers, mind you, like, I mean, we're aware, but for the benefit of the audience, miniatures weren't made to be hung in galleries, etc. They were, part of folios, and for the kind of, consumption of sort of courtiers and kings and whoever they chose to show it, I suppose, not for the general public to view. So yeah, from that kind of angle,
Kota in particular, it was hung in the palaces.
Yeah, I mean, those kind. Yeah, that's true. You did have that, and again, yeah, from that perspective, and at that point, it's kind of important to also think like Kota and Bundi. So Bundi was like the originally Kota was kind of part of Bundi, and it was the second son of the Mahara of Bundi, who was granted in 1731, I think, by Shah Jahan, the sort of charter. Yeah, I think Jahangir maybe did it in like the earlier. I think in 1724, I think the thing started off, and then by 1731, I think Kota officially sort of kind of came into being under Madhav Singh. And Madhav Singh we would obviously recognize from the very kind of famous painting of the decapitation of Khan Jahan Lodi. So he features in that painting. So you can tell like the Mughal influence on this painting. Obviously, this is how it seeped in, because these were individuals who were, in campaign associated with the Mughal court. But yeah, it's quite the coming back to the point of how idyllic it all seems. And I always think of kind of, if you think of the Ramayana, and it starts with kind of Valmiki sees a hunter sort of shooting one of the birds, these sort of migratory birds, who are always meant to, it is a popular folklore that they always stay as like couple, and the kind of the bereavement of the remaining bird made him kind of so sad that he picked up apparently and like wrote these sort of two lines, which is mythologically is considered as kind of the first poetry that was written. So when you come from that sort of perspective, I often wonder if like the artist turned a bit rogue here and he sort of sympathized with the animals as much as he did his job to please his patron to paint this painting. Because
traditionally, what the Mughal miniature artists also did right from Akbar's time, the Chittor siege, etc., where they showed the animals who are suffering as whether you want to call it a synonym or whatever for the human beings that were suffering.
Yeah.
So,
and because if you look at the painting, every, like, the lines are in a pair. You have the deers and like the birds at the backdrop, and there is like, there's a lot of sort of, even on the kind of the hill cliff, we have like two leopards as well. So from that perspective, it is indeed like a very sort of idyllic image, and there's that peace being interrupted by these women who are adamant on hunting.
but is the peace being interrupted by the women, or is it by the Gora, by the Englishman?
No, I think he's too far away from the scene to. I think he is interrupting it, but in the backdrop. Like, I don't think. I think he's a lot further away than the kind of what we see in front of us. But it does seem like there is something perhaps going on in the kind of the other side, which the artist has not shown us. So yeah, it's a kind of, that is a question to be discussed. But yeah.
So we've ended up after 35 minutes with more questions than we started with.
True. I mean, that's the thing with these paintings, that you can always have. I mean, even today when I was looking at this painting again, and as you mentioned, like, all three women are wearing different clothes, and the women, like, in the kind of the front with the sort of a cap hat like sort of headgear. I was really fascinated because for me that was like, I wouldn't necessarily associate that with a sort of as a Rajput attire as such. So I was curious to see if there were other paintings from Kota that would depict women with similar headgear, and turns out there were actually. So that was quite an interesting insight, and makes me want to kind of look more into what they were wearing, and where like. It's interesting to observe the kind of obviously all elements, but like these sort of fashion/textile elements of things as well, because often, especially in present day kind of times with all the political kind of situation we have, there's always a desire for purity, and kind of, people look at certain things this is Indian, or this is XYZ. So I find it interesting that there's a mixture of all these. Even Kota is a style of like miniatures. It is a mixture of many places, the earliest artist we had, the Kota, who we sort of often call the Kota master. He had because he was working in Golconda and Aurangabad, he would have had, and he probably either came from, somewhere in Iran or Central Asia, or had kind of influence of that, or was aware of those themes, because his patrons might have asked him to paint these Iranian sort of a folklore or mythological kind of, or literary texts. And then once he starts working in Kota, or like for the Kota patron, these kind of lions and elephants take, they occupy, like they replace the dragons and the kind of the other mythical creatures that we often find in, say, Iranian miniatures. So that's quite fascinating, and yeah, it's really interesting. And even in Bundi, obviously, because Kota kind of was sort of came from Bundi in a way, like you see that the images that appear in Bundi's Badal Mahal of hunting scenes as well, the Kota artist kind of took inspiration from that. Or you had like miniature artists from Mewar, for example, because Kota and the Mewar royal families intermarried. And they were very much kind of, before sort of the Mughal involvement, they were very much related. So you had artists from Mewar coming in as well. So that makes for a very interesting mix. And each artist then sort of, I think, brings their own element to this painting, which and the subsequent paintings as well. So it's quite fascinating from that perspective.
And because we are mentioning clothes, the first princess seems to be wearing less on her bodice than she is on her head. I mean,
I think that's just more of a transparent, but you are right, like in comparison to the other two, it does come across, like the first one is a lot more sort of in this ajama like a garment, which yeah, it is quite fascinating, while the other two have these ordinaries on them. Maybe this actually, maybe the first one also has it, but perhaps it's a lot more transparent. Maybe it's like one of those fine muslins that they had. So yeah, it is, yeah, as it's fascinating. Like with this, as I, some of the images that we see in the backdrop, like above in the video, that I wanted to highlight, because you look at this painting and your eyes immediately go to the kind of the main things, the lions, the women, and things like that. But if you really zoom into this painting, there's so many details. Like I hadn't even realized. It would have been my, I don't know, 8th or 10th time looking at this painting, that there were like a tortoise and mice, etc. in this painting. There are like bayake khosle, that too you can find it. It's almost like a sort of a Where's Wally type of situation going on. And yeah, it's such a detailed painting, and the leaves, the way gold has been used to kind of, for certain details, that kind of again goes to show that it must have, been made for an important person, but also like the artist who was working on it, again, the amount of detail they've put in. Like there are bears behind the tree near like the cliff. So it's, again, this painting is just so detailed, and it's rare to, I think, come across a painting like this where there's such level of detail.
But there's one more detail right there. You'll see she's carrying a baby on her back. The little meerkat.
Like the savage.
She's got a sparrow in her mouth.
Yes,
but she's got a baby on her back.
Oh, that's
it just
interesting.
goes. And this is what we're seeing when we've just got one magnifying glass. Can you imagine the person making this?
Exactly, like that's what I find kind of, and this is not like a kind of a massive painting as such, like I think if I look at the kind of the dimensions of it, it's what 34 centimeters by 27 centimeters roughly. So but yeah, the amount of kind of detail and the finesse of it as well, like sometimes the artist would end up focusing, they might make the individuals really fine, or the main character is really fine, but the rest can be just, not given as much attention. But in this painting, I find like everything, like, has been given that sort of enough amount of detail, and that's what I find really fascinating as well.
And what I hadn't realized was that the princes are sitting in the middle of water.
Yes.
Area is water.
Yeah, which is not unusual. You obviously in Rajasthan you have a lot of these sort of hunting lodges and water palaces. I mean, obviously, because the painting is sort of, incomplete from that aspect, it could be that there is land on the other side. We don't know, but it could very well be that this is actually, in the middle of water, which, I mean, Rajasthan is famous for its water palaces, and you do find hunting lodges which were created with the near water bodies, because naturally animals would come to that, and it'd be easier to then kind of, hunt them. So, yeah, it is architecturally as well. Yeah, it's a and I think most of the water palaces, I think they started constructing them in like the 1700s, maybe the latter half of them, if I remember correctly. So yeah, it's an early kind of, confirmation of that.
Ankit, I'm so glad you chose this painting. It's gorgeous.
It is indeed, isn't it?
It just made my 1st of January.
And it's made mine as well. I mean, what better way to start by talking about miniatures? So, yeah, I thought it was a perfect sort of start to the new year.
Okay, I'm going to... anything more, or should we open this up to questions?
Yeah, feel free to kind of open it to questions.
Okay, so one question which I have no idea how you're going to answer is, somebody asked, can you talk more about the Pushti Marg Vallabh Kot? I've only written that much down.
Okay.
So they want you to talk more about that. Is that possible at all?
So as I was saying, that is basically during the reign of Muhammad Shah Rangila. the Mughal emperor, that the Bundi Maharao sort of rebelled, or he assisted in the rebellion of the Girdar Bahadur. But
Okay, I think
it's
joined. Is that
can we cancel that?
I don't
And
know. I'll try that 1 minute. Removed. Okay, done.
okay. And then it's, as I was saying, the governor of Allahabad, Girdar Bahadur, had revolted, and the Said brothers were effectively controlling sort of the Mughal Empire at that time, and they weren't as pleased, so they sent Bhim Singh of Kota to march on Bundi. And in November, this is in November 1719, and as he was making his way, he reached Mathura, and then he did his kind of trip to Vrindavan. And there he kind of initiated into Vallabh Sampradaya, which is also Pushti Marg. And they sort of, have these, they worship, like the major shrine of Pushti Marg is Natwara near Udaipur. And the Kota rulers really sort of were patrons of it. And as I said, as a result, like their sort of a kind of deity, Brijnathji, the Kota family's kind of deity, he effectively kind of, acquired this ruler status, which we see in other princely sort of states as well, where the god has been, in Mewar, obviously, we have Ekling Ji. So it's not unusual for these Rajput states to do that, but then for that to feature in the form of, first we obviously, as I said, like we had these hunting paintings, but on the latter half you have like Maharao Kishore Singh Ji, etc., in the latter 1800s, who were really into the ritualistic aspects of these kind of miniature, well, these, the Pushti Marg, and the kind of, they wrote poetry as well, and really patronized sort of worship of Krishna in the various forms, like in form of Shinaji or Britaji, etc. So that influenced, and the latter kind of Kota miniatures that we see before photography comes into vogue and these miniatures start to fade out are these, Maharao Kishore Singh Ji along with Gosai Ji and other sort of religious leaders kind of worshipping in the various sort of celebrations, because in Pushti Marg you have these bichwais and the detailed kind of elaborate celebrations that are kind of done, and art plays an important role. And miniatures, obviously, because they worship these paintings as well. So that is, something.
Yeah, because they had Mewari ancestors as well, right?
I think
there was a lot of
one of the Bundi princes married into, and then I think there were like subsequent kind of marriages. At some point, I think like they'd also fought as well, like so there was a lot of but as a result you did have like artists kind of coming in from Mewar, and like one of the Maharaja's uncle was like a Mewar ruler, so they're like they were often like interrelated, so yeah.
Perfect. Folks, if anyone has any more questions, please can you put them in now, or else put it in the question box, one of the two. You have not very much time, so let me know quickly if you want any more questions. Because, I mean, this is a fabulous discussion. I can carry this on all night. But
True, yes. We've gone way over kind of 30 minutes, but that's the thing with miniatures. I can talk about them all day.
literally. Okay. I'm just going to ask folks. Sorry, is that a voice from somewhere? Somebody's asked. Okay. I'm going to ask people, if you have any more questions, just send them to, comment below our post, and we can try to answer them as and when Ankit can get to them. Or if I can add anything, I will as well. But Ankit, thanks. This has been so much fun.
No, thank you for kind of suggesting this and organizing this. It's been a great pleasure.
I can't believe you're sitting in London and you know so much about COVID. There's one question.
I mean, I started in 2014 when I really started taking them seriously. I was always like exposed to miniatures, obviously in Kishangar, like most of the homes do have. kind of a representation of the Bunny Tunny. But in my school, I kind of had a teacher here in Norwich, in England, and she had gone to Sheikh Havati and she'd seen the murals, etc. And we were given this project called, like, I think kind of I Me Mine, or like a summer kind of project to do. And it's then I kind of, came across them. But even then I hadn't quite realized, because I just didn't have that much of knowledge as to why they were painted or what was the reason. I remember she had introduced me to works of the Singh twins, to kind of introduce, direct me more towards the contemporary side of things. But then it's only when I got into university and I started exploring and I realized that because I like reading, so I realized, there's a link between literature and miniatures, because Ragmalas or Baramasa, etc., and Rasik Priya, and these are kind of, Rasik Priya is based on kind of Hindi literature, and so that kind of was fascinating. And obviously you have all the mythological aspects as well, so I thought, okay, and obviously their ideas, like the painters and the rulers, the patrons, their ideas of what was, right, are a lot different to our ideas today. I found that interesting as well from a political kind of point of view. So that all started a journey, and then I just ended up kind of reading and coming. And I think, but the best ways to learn have just been by observing them, and my account kind of really helped me because it developed my own eye at looking at them. But yeah, it's
best about Rajasthani miniatures is those spaces actually still exist.
Exactly.
You don't see that.
Yeah, and that is, and what I realized was that I guess I have an advantage of some sorts, in the sense that having grown up in Rajasthan till the age of 11, I was very much aware of the culture and kind of, the textiles and aspects of that. I always took an interest in that as well, and the historical aspects as well. So I found it a lot easier to actually then kind of connect with it. And I only realized it when I had somebody who was non-Indian and they were trying to, paint something or and sort of, analyze it. And it's a lot difficult for them to kind of see the finesse of like how the Odni is kind of coming, which side the Jama is tied, etc. These are sort of, not aspects, or the way certain jewelry is, like you can tell, and the styles of the pagris as well, like the Bundi Kota pagri. I think it has a slight sharp fin to it. I think the Bundi pagri has that. And you find that in painting. So if you're looking at a Kota painting and then there are these kind of pagris, and then it's like, okay, well, like what is the Bundi kind of influence into it creeping in? So that's very fascinating, and it does help in that sense that I kind of got to experience the culture and live in India. But yeah, it's a fascinating world.
Yeah, that's something you have the advantage on me on. Yeah. They're actually living and breathing the culture of those miniatures. And unfortunately, I don't have too many of my favorite miniatures. Are all made before my city was made.
Okay. But still, I think it's still there. My wider point, like that I hope to sort of develop over as I go forward with my sort of page, etc., is that there is a certain intrinsic sort of idea or like Indian aesthetic that there is, which kind of aligns with like all of the art forms that we have. So whether it be these classical dances or our literature or our paintings, I think the paintings sort of suffered a little because photography came in and the patrons, obviously Maharajas, etc., went away. So we sort of forgot about it. Obviously, classical dance like Bharatnatyam, etc., they had a revival during the nationalist movements. So we managed to sort of, have a greater understanding of them in the wider cultural context. Like more people probably know about those dances and things, or literature for that matter, but they don't know as much about the paintings. But I think the paintings capture again those kind of these certain Indian way of looking at things, or kind of, there's a friend I was talking to and I was just telling them I watched Devdas on like Christmas Eve again. And there is, I think in one of the songs, Shahrukh is like literally taking a thorn out of Aishwarya's. And I don't know if Bhansali kind of, how much he knows about Indian miniatures, but you literally have set.
You've seen Padma, no, I don't know which is the movie with Deepika Padukone and
Bajirao Mastani.
Bajirao. Yes, you know he knows a lot about
Yeah. So yeah, like so that I was like, you know, you can find those, and I think it could be that my next few posts might be on that. So to the sort of the hero taking out thorn out of the kind of the heroine's leg, feet rather, and that's again like yes, nobody's he might not have thought about that, but he just wanted to depict that as a, and I wonder where that comes from. Like, is this a sort of, did he actually read about it, or is it just like there's an intrinsic thing that ties us all up in? Or obviously when you look at all the sculptures and these paintings, there are repetitive themes as well.
Especially the Christian ones, yeah.
Yeah, so I'd like to believe there is something that kind of ties, and there is a certain Indian sensibility.
Listen, you're coming back, right? We are doing another one of these sessions. This is just too much fun.
It requires a lot of preparation. This was my first time, so I was a bit nervous as well. So I was like, oh, but I think it's gone well. You're a great kind of host to put people at ease, so that's good.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Ankit, and looking forward to seeing you again soon. Virtually, of course.
Yes, have a wonderful 2024, and everybody who joined as well. Thank you so much. And see you maybe.
And have a wonderful 2024. I hope this starts your wonderful 2024.
It will, I'm sure.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night. Bye.